Christopher German coming to you with Sunshine News for Coffee with the Candidates. And we have a wonderful conversation we're going to have today. We have Andrew Nichols today, who is running for the first commissioner seat. And he's got a bunch of different stuff on his platform I'm sure he would like to talk about. And we're going to hear about all of it today to try to inform you as the voters for this upcoming election. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Andrew. Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing very, very
Chris
well.
or Christopher?
Whatever. I don't care. Keep it conversational.
Sounds good.
So you're one of the later comers to this race.
I am.
What was your decision? What it was the very short hours before the cock crowed, so to speak? What made you decide to throw your hat in the ring?
I had been thinking about it for quite a while, for several months. I worked for the sheriff's office prior to this. I was also the head of the union for the sheriff's office. We were in contract negotiations with the county on the collective bargaining agreement, and I had ambitions to run for political office, which we can get into. I want to help the community, continue to serve, but I wasn't willing to throw my name in the hat or leave the sheriff's office until I completed the collective bargaining agreement and we dried the ink on the contract.
Okay.
So it was kind of I was on this timeline. And I didn't want any of the politics of running for office to influence the contract negotiations we were in.
That makes sense.
So that was really my reasoning for holding off until the contract was signed, and then I gave notice to the sheriff's office and I filed for this position.
Well, then, now that you're all filed and you're in there, what is your platform? What are you going for? What is in your heart to make happen here in Klamath County as a commissioner?
Well, I personally would like to continue to serve. I've served my whole life. Everything's always been about serving something bigger than myself. I did that in my military service, my time at the sheriff's office, and I would like to continue it through as a commissioner for Klamath County. And there's several reasons. One is I'm getting older. I've been a fighter my whole life. I've been a warrior, and at this point in my life, I don't run as fast, I don't jump as high, and
don't we all?
Yeah, and I would like to use a little better weapon that I have. That's 6 inches between my ears.
Okay.
And continue to try to fight for things. What motivated me to get here? I've spent the last year in the background involved watching all of the commissioner meetings, watching the business meetings, the agendas, the council meetings, all of it, and wrapping my head around it. Plus, I do have a little bit of background in politics. I have a degree in political science, so it's always been an interest.
You got that from AMU?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
It's always been an interest and a passion of mine. So that's why I'm now choosing to go this route. Now, policy-wise, there's a number of reasons. Measure 110, I believe, devastated not just the state, but our community and our county. We've got a lot of problems that all can kind of correlate back to the drug issue, whether it's property crime, homelessness, mental health. All of them tie in somewhat to substance abuse and drug abuse. And Measure 110 devastated our county. I personally saw it from the overdoses, the deaths that I would go investigate, to the crimes and dealing with everything related to drugs. Now, our legislature has made some baby steps in changing that with the most recent legislation to kind of walk back 110 and recriminalize some of the drugs. However, it's going to take probably a decade or more to kind of heal from the damage caused by 110. So one of my passions in doing this is I really want to dive into public safety. We understand, I mean, you were involved just as I was at kind of the last year between the commissioner's office and the sheriff's office and what happened there. And what I want to be able to do is heal that, bring us together, not just the sheriff's office, but I mean the police department, community corrections, the DA's office, mental health, behavioral health. Everybody needs to come together, work as a team, get on one sheet of music, and work on this issue together. And I believe that's what I can bring to the table, not just on this issue. I don't want to, I am a former deputy, so I think I'm going to kind of get painted into a one-issue candidate. I'm not. I study all of the issues. I'm not necessarily an expert on one or the other. I'm trying to become a jack of all trades in them. But I believe that I bring leadership to the table. My whole adult life has been focused on leadership. I've been awarded for leadership numerous times, and I want to bring that to the board starting with 110, but a multitude of issues, whether it's mental health, whether it's housing, whether it's the economy, all of these things. I believe I can bring a revised sense of leadership to the board and a new sense of focus.
Well, then let's start getting to some of the issues that Klamath County faces. I mean, we have obviously the educational issue, where our education system's always struggling to keep going in this state. We have a bunch of issues that showed up this past winter with how to handle the roads in this state and keeping plowed and that kind of stuff. Money is always an issue. Derek DeGroot said in the commissioners meeting a couple weeks ago that, you know, we're running out of revenues to fund all the services that we need to do in this state. And then on top of all of that stuff, we have a major economic barrier, which is the water, and getting the water to turn on and keeping all of the growth happening and the agriculture happening in this state, or in this county, because this is a major funding part of this county. So we've got a lot of big problems coming up on the horizon. What is your take on all that stuff?
Absolutely. So you brought several things there. We can. The last thing I heard you talk about, we talked about the water for a minute. I just went to the Water Users Association annual meeting last night. Had some really good conversations with people involved in the community. I'm not a water user per se, but I'm definitely tied to it, just like our entire community is. Mm-hmm. My wife owns and operates a business within the ag industry, so water has an effect on my own personal life in a back way. But I think it does to all of us. Like it permeates so deep in our economy and who we are. If you really think back about like agriculture, it's a heritage thing here in the Klamath Basin. We're on 6 generations in some cases now or more of family farms and agriculture being a major economic driver here, and it still is. And obviously water is a piece of that. The county commissioner, they've got kind of a limited role. There's numerous state and federal agencies that oversee the water piece here in the Klamath Basin. It would be much better, I believe, if they weren't involved and we could control our own natural resources more, but that's not the circumstance we find ourselves in. I do believe as a county commissioner that this is a huge platform for advocacy. The commissioners will have face time and do have face time with many of our legislatures, both at the state and federal level. And those are opportunities where they can voice, which way the basin is going and be that voice of advocacy for the basin. And me personally in that position, I would staunchly advocate for farming, timber, all of our natural resources, more control being pushed to us and allowing us to kind of solve our problems. The federal government likes to put packages or they kind of package the problem into a larger thing that doesn't necessarily account for all the nuances in our community. I heard a speaker last night talking about how the federal government says, "Oh, we solved, the Colorado water issues and things like that." That doesn't necessarily apply to the Klamath Basin. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more local control over it. Again, that's not our current circumstance. But as a commissioner, I will staunchly advocate to those entities and people that I get an audience with for more water, for our agricultural community, while understanding there is importance in the cultural heritage of our tribes and the environmental stewardship of our watershed altogether. And I think that there's a way we can balance all of it. I mean, we did a pretty good job of it before, the late 90s when all of this kind of really started blowing out of proportion, and then the last 30 years have been what they are with the water. So I would like to go forward to our state and federal legislatures and advocate for our community and our water and giving us a voice in that issue. Okay. Can you remind me? We talked about that. You talked about schools.
There's the schools issue. There is the revenues issue in the state that we've talked about. We turned down. We downgraded our road protections over the winter time because we didn't have enough money to pay the plow drivers.
Correct.
That's a problem. That's a big problem that we're going to face down the line with increasing costs and decreasing revenues.
Yes.
So says Derek DeGroot in the commissioners meeting. What would be your ideas on how we could grow the revenues of the state?
So says Derek DeGroot. I think so says the economy. We've all been through this the last several years with inflation and the price of goods and services have went up across everything. That's no different for government. I mean, government has to pay for gas, has to pay for heat, all the things that we have to pay for as citizens, the government pays for as well. And as the cost of those rise, well, the cost of government doing business rises. So then we kind of come into this balance of, there's always going to be the demand for the services that the citizens in the county have always had. Well, those services now cost more, so how do we pay for those services? I think that's a very tough answer, and it requires some candid discussion in our community about what we want to do. I mean, if things cost more, are we talking about raising revenue through taxes? Are we talking about decreasing services? I think that there's probably some things that can happen in between there. Right now I have a copy of the county's budget for last year. It is thick. I'm not going to give you a page number, if I had to guess, 100 pages or so, and I'm going through it line by line, wrapping my own head around where each and every dollar and cent we're spending is going to. So I think that there's probably avenues where we can maybe cut in some areas and look for creative funding in other areas. I'll speak to the sheriff's office because I worked there. I think that there are areas that they can work for funding through different grants, and I think that probably applies across the county. I know grants can get a little touchy because then you're tied to specific policies within the grants, but I do think that Commissioner DeGroot was opening the door to a bigger discussion we're going to have as a community, and that is everything costs more right now, to include the cost of doing government. So we're going to have to, as a community, as a board of commissioners, figure out where our priorities lie as far as our revenue intake and the services we provide.
Well, there's other aspect to this too, is that the population growth. If you compare what's been happening in Klamath County to, say, over in Portland or over in Bend, they're all seeing decreases. We've actually seen an increase of 6,000 people over the last couple of years. We are getting more people here. We are probably going to be getting more businesses here. We certainly have more kids in the school system this year than we've had in previous years. So it does seem like we do have more people coming here, which could be possible revenue sources, certainly more taxes getting paid from more people, but also more businesses paying taxes. That could be a possible windfall on the horizon. But then we also have the side of everything's more expensive too. So I mean, it's kind of more people come in here, it costs the same amount. So I'm not sure I understand the full understanding of all how that's going to get worked out. But it's got to be at least a daunting question to asking yourself, I imagine.
Yes, it is, and figuring out that balance between, the revenue coming in and the expenditures going out, and like I said, having those candid discussions about which way we're going to go with this, and the services we provide, vice the amount of money coming in. I mean, it's that. The commissioner was correct in saying right now the budget is flat. Now, I wasn't part of their buildup in that budget process, and I can't sit here and tell you where each pot of money is at and where it's going. I'm working through that. Like I said, this budget is very long and it's very nuanced, and trying to figure all that out is tough. I believe it's tough for the commissioners too. There's a lot of money that comes into our county government and gets distributed out. I can promise that as a commissioner, I will be a good steward of that. I will be completely transparent and honest with the public about how we're spending our dollars and what we're spending our dollars on. But even prior to that, my intention is going into these cycles to be out in the community, to be doing things like this, Chris, and talking with people at establishments like this, and getting the community's input and feedback on where our citizens believe we should be spending our money, where we should be prioritizing our services. And as I've done that over the last year, a lot of the feedback, most of the feedback I've been getting is people really want to prioritize toward public safety now. As we not just here in town. I mean, we can drive up and down 6th Street and see the homelessness and see the drugs, and it affects everybody. But you get in our outlying areas in Sprague River and Bly Mountain and Bly and North County, it's a real problem out there. And there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of drugs, and the public safety services really are the ones that can get a handle on this.
This is a question I haven't necessarily asked many of the candidates, but given your law background and given your experience in the county here, Chiloquin has one of the highest murder rates in the state, and it's one of the smallest communities in the state. What can we do to help the people of Chiloquin make that community thrive better and be safer for people to live there?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just in my time as sheriff's office, I responded to many homicides in Chiloquin. One triple homicide, which is kind of mind-blowing for such a small town.
It's a tiny little town.
Yeah,
What's going on there? Yeah.
Triple homicides,
Yeah.
right? I think that historically, Chiloquin has always had some law enforcement issues, and some of it might be related to, I'll be frank, some of it probably is related to the ties between the tribes and the community and some negative relations going back 70, 80, 100 years. And I think that everybody on all sides has some fault in kind of the outcomes that we're seeing now in Chiloquin. But the bigger question is, what do we do moving forward? Like, how do we get a handle on it? So we're not having triple murders. So we're not having people murdered in front of, houses across the street from the store in Chiloquin. Like those, how do we get a handle on that? And it's going to take a multifaceted approach where everybody gets involved, including not just the sheriff's office and the DA's office, behavioral health. Everybody needs to come together and come up with solutions. And even Chiloquin, the tribe and the city, they're working on it right now. They're working on establishing some of their own law enforcement entities, which I think is great. They're recognizing the issues up there as well, and how do we solve this? The sheriff's office has contracted with Chiloquin for a while. That's good. That puts cops in Chiloquin, but it also doesn't necessarily put ownership of Chiloquin on a specific cop or a specific deputy. I think that would go a long ways, whether it was a resident deputy or a Chiloquin police officer or things like that. A sense of ownership of the area and what is going on within that area could go a long ways. Deputies right now, they're spending time in Chiloquin, but that they're also going to Chemult and they're going to Crescent and they're going to Bly.
It's a big county.
There's 3 men and women on duty at any one time running patrol over 6,200 square miles. It's pretty hard to take ownership of the Chiloquin area. So I think some of the issues in Chiloquin are systemic, going back decades for a multitude of reasons that everybody needs to accept some responsibility on. But we are where we are, and we have had a lot of murders there. And in order to correct this, we're going to need to bring everybody to the table. And this ties right back into what you were talking about before with revenues and expenditures and the services we're providing our counties. We need to have these really tough conversations about what do we want? What do we want to do? We want to continue to see this type of behavior happen in our community, or do we want to get a handle on it? And if we want to get a handle on it, how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah. Well, speaking of paying for things, let's put your military hat on for a sec, if you could,
yes,
please. We have the F-35s coming to Kingsley Field. That's got to be a big thing that's coming to this community, and quite frankly, with all the support mechanisms that are out there. There's also, a little bird told me from the City Hall that there's all kinds of planning for developing that facility and putting in some new runways and putting in some new parking areas and really putting some major money into that facility there. That's going to mean lots of jobs for lots of people, construction jobs. We've got technical jobs through the military, contracting, that kind of thing. What do you think the future looks like with respect to the military here in the community?
I think it's super exciting. I mean, anywhere that you have a base that grows, they're going to feed the local economy. That's more dollars flowing into our local economy in our county. There are some things that we need to be having conversations about, and that is, what are we doing to prepare for this? Like our housing, our infrastructure, as the influx of people come in, that's going to be a stress on those types of things. I feel I am in a unique position. I have worked at the very highest levels of the Department of Defense. I've worked within the Pentagon. I've worked within Headquarters Marine Corps. So I kind of understand the Department of Defense higher level initiative process. And I think I'm very well suited to have those conversations with our military leadership and talk about, what their plans are for this community, especially like something like housing. Having worked in the military, they're not just planning on bringing the people, they're thinking about where are we going to house these people too. And that's a great opportunity for people like our Board of Commissioners to come together with our military leaders and doing things like public-private venture housing, which is a concept the military uses where they come in and they build certain housing, and then the local entities control the housing, but it's specifically for the military people. A base housing per se that's controlled by the local markets, vice the bigger military establishment. So to kind of circle back on this whole expansion of the air base out here, I think it's super exciting. I think it's a great opportunity for our community and for economic development, and to work with the Department of Defense and leverage some of their resources with ours, and build a more robust Klamath County.
Cool. Well, then let's talk about, if we could for a moment, you're going to be coming into a Board of Commission that is somewhat beleaguered, shall we say. We don't know if Derek DeGroot is going to be back on the commission. Possibly. He's got two other people he's running against in his race. We know Dave Hensley's not going to be on that commission, and we know that Kelly Minty's going to be on that commission. How can you envision working with the existing structure that's in the commission, and how do you envision working with all these other commissioners?
I envision working with them. That's how I've already established relationships with them. Commissioner DeGroot and I have had several conversations over the last year. Commissioner Morris and I have had several conversations as well. I feel like I understand how they think and their brains work, and I feel like if Commissioner DeGroot ultimately wins his election and he's in place, I feel like I will work very well with him. His opponents, I will be honest, I don't know that well. I've had a conversation with Todd, and I've never met Sally, so I can't really speak to what the dynamics would be working with them. I do think the dynamics of myself and Kelly, and then if Commissioner DeGroot gets elected, would work well because we already have established some relationships. I am my own person though, with my own thoughts, and what I can bring to that board is I will talk to the people. I will spend a lot of time researching and thinking about the issues, and really work to impose the will of the people of the Klamath County on the bureaucratic government vis-a the Board of Commissioners.
Well, sir, we have actually used our time up that quickly, believe it or not.
Okay,
I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you,
sir.
too.
And thank you for being here today. This has been another episode of Coffee with the Candidates. I'm Christopher German. This is the Sunshine News, and we're here at the Waffle Hut, home of the Smash Burger. We wanted to say big thanks to Waffle Hut for having us here today, and we want to say big thanks to you for watching. So tune in next time. We're trying to get all the candidates to come down here. If you know a candidate and you want to see them on this channel, tell them to come get in touch with me. Let's talk. Let's have a cup of coffee together and let's chat about these things. Well, that's a bit for today. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher German. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.